Ah, St. Valentine's, the day of love, the day of chocolate, the day of 5-course meals at fancy restaurants, the day of beheadings and executions. Oh, wait. My name's Ken. I'm a full-time non-traditional missionary that's been abroad for 5 years. Also a researcher and teacher that seriously digs history, especially religious history. And I teach classes online too. You should check them out in my profile. St. Valentine's Day. It's a big deal in the Western world. An entire industry exists around it, celebrating the one you love. Or, as non-romantics like to say, a day of the year to celebrate the one you love? I do that every day. But why do we celebrate St. Valentine's Day as a day of love? Especially when we find out Valentine's Day originally commemorated a Christian martyr's beheading in the 3rd century. Let's have some fun. Truth is, we don't exactly know who or which Valentinus was the actual St. Valentine, which is one reason so many dang churches in Europe from Rome to Ireland profess to have pieces of his skull or his whole skull in their reliquaries. Which makes one ask, who in the heck do all those skulls belong to? The chronography of 354, the earliest list of Roman Christian martyrs, doesn't mention St. Valentine, although it was compiled by a Christian named Valentinus, a popular name at the time. But later lists, compiled between 460, 544, do include this St. Valentine, who is in some versions a 3rd century priest or bishop who ministered to persecuted Christians of the Roman Empire and was beheaded for his efforts. Other legends say he was a martyr in Africa, but the most popular ones by far have him located firmly in Rome. Regardless, the Feast of St. Valentine was established by Pope Gelasius on February 14th, 496 CE, and by the 8th century, the occasion evolved to St. Valentine's Day. So there was a dude somewhere, we just don't know exactly which one it was, and a whole load of legends developed over later centuries about this guy and his exploits. And he became really popular in the Middle Ages. Some stories say Valentinus used to illegally marry soldiers and their wives when Emperor Claudius II supposedly forbade marriages of Roman soldiers in the mid-3rd century, as Claudius believed unmarried soldiers fought better. And it was after being caught doing these marriages, Valentine was clubbed, stoned, and decapitated. And this supposedly is where we get the idea of parchment hearts being given to one another, as Valentine supposedly did this for soldiers to carry with them to war, to remind these men of their vows to their wives and of God's love. And later tales said he gave it to persecuted Christians that he would pray for. But verifiable history is really a bit hazy on the subject. Another popular medieval legend of St. Valentine comes from the Acta, where a Roman priest named Valentinus was taken into custody by a magistrate named Asterius during the reign of Emperor Claudius II. And while talking about Jesus, Asterius promised to convert if Valentinus could cure his foster daughter of blindness. And Valentinus supposedly said, "Lord Jesus Christ, enlighten your handmaid, because you are God, the true light." And boom! The girl could see. And convinced, Asterius and his family were baptized. Unluckily for them, they were all later executed by Emperor Claudius for not acknowledging that the emperor was a god, with Valentinus being beheaded with his body buried at the site of his execution on the Via Flaminia, where a chapel was later built. And it's a great story, but again, there are a few actual verifiable facts about it. A similar legend sprouted up in the Middle Ages that Valentine was the Bishop of Terni during the 3rd century and was under house arrest for evangelizing, or in some versions, offering marriages to soldiers. Like the other version of the tale, while under house arrest, he was discussing the truth of Jesus with the judge, and to test him, the judge brought in his blind adopted daughter. Valentine prayed, and the girl was healed. So the judge was like, "Dang, bro, okay, well, what do I need to do?" The Valentine said he should break all his pagan idols, fast for 3 days, and then be baptized. So the judge and his 44-member household did as Valentine asked, and the judge additionally freed all the Christian inmates in his province. But in this version of the tale, Valentine was later arrested for evangelizing and was brought before Emperor Claudius. And Claudius really liked Valentine, until Valentine tried to convince Claudius about Jesus. And Claudius commanded Valentine to renounce Christianity, as in Rome it was believed that the emperor was a god. But Valentine said he couldn't do it, and so he was sentenced to death. And the day before his beheading, Valentine sent a letter to the daughter of the judge whose blindness he had healed, and in some versions of the legend had fallen in love with, and signed the letter, "From your Valentine." And it's this tale that became popular with some big-time writers of the past. Ever heard of Chaucer, Shakespeare? And those guys are linked to really pushing the romantic narrative of the tales of St. Valentine, helping turn it into the holiday we know today, with our elements of Eros and Cupid and stuff like that. Now, I have to put this in here because if I don't, someone's going to pop off in the comments with the whole, well, Valentine's Day is really a pagan celebration of Lupercalia. But few modern scholars hold fast to that nowadays. Lupercalia was a rural fertility celebration held on what's now February 15th, honoring the Roman god Lupercus. It originally involved sacrificing goats and dogs, but evolved into this crazy celebration in cities where during festivities, horned up half-naked fellas wearing animal skins and armed with goat thongs would run through the streets and look for women to hit with their goat whips. And it was supposed to promote fertility. And if women were already pregnant, it was thought it would make their babies healthy. Man, those Romans. In 496 CE, however, Pope Gelasius supposedly denounced the rowdy festival and outlawed it. But he was the guy who established the first feast of St. Valentine to be celebrated on the day of Valentine's execution, February 14th. Still, there's no direct evidence that the Pope purposefully replaced Lupercalia with the more chilled-out holy day of the martyred St. Valentine. But, as I always say, no religion exists in a vacuum, so who knows? But it's important to remember the original feasts of St. Valentine were not about romanticized Eros and Cupid-style love, but of the miraculous, sacrificial, faith-driven love of Christian brotherhood. It would be the later medieval and Renaissance poets who really brought the romantic portion of the legend to the forefront, literally romanticizing what would become a day for romantics, which is kind of neat. So is Valentine's history verifiable? Not really. But his story that reaches us today is filled with the power of sacrificial love. And even 1800 years later is an inspiration to many. Enjoy your Valentine's Day.